friends, Heidi here from Rain Country. God is good all the time, and today we're going to make organic peppermint patties. So let's get to it. Now, this is my own recipe, just so you know. So the recipe is based on a basic chocolate recipe and a basic white chocolate recipe with my own additions. What you're going to need, especially if you're going to want to keep it organic, is some organic cacao butter. Now, cacao meaning that it's raw, and I will link to all the things I can below, the ones that I use. Some organic cacao powder, some raw honey, local if you can find it, which this is because we have good friends and it's amazing. Some organic powdered sugar, and this is homemade powdered sugar, and you can find a video on how to make your own right up here. It's super easy, only takes 2 ingredients. And some organic powdered milk, and again I will link to this below as well. Whole milk would be best if you can find it, though I believe Organic Valley does have this in a whole milk version, though it's sometimes really difficult to find. But I know you can get this one on Amazon because that's where I got that. And of course you're going to need some peppermint. Now this is the Now Foods, it's not specifically organic, but peppermint is something that grows so easily that there's no need to not grow it organically, and I do trust Now Foods brand. So that's what I'm going to be using. I think that's all the ingredients. I don't think I left anything out. So I'm going to bring you in closer and show you, as far as measurements go, what you're going to need. All right, and also I'll link to these little cups below. These are really good too for making peanut butter cups, and I have a recipe for that too that I will do down the road. Another of my own creations. So what you need to do to start out with is having, and I'll link to the scales if I remember, having a good, though I hate digital for the most part, having a good digital scales to me for some stuff I find to be a little more accurate. So what you're going to need to start off with is 4 ounces of your cacao butter. And so obviously because it's in chunks, weighing it out is going to be the easiest. And don't be too concerned about getting your ounces exactly accurate. Right there, that's 3.99 is probably going to go over 3.06 or 4.06. And I'd rather go a little too much than too little. So what I've got here is my Nesco hot plate, and it's hooked up to our solar power. And so I'm just going to turn the heat on low. The best way you're supposed to do this is by using a double boiler, but I don't have one, and I know there's ways you can do it with 2 pots, whatever. I just don't have issues. As long as you do it in a good stainless steel pot that's rather on the heavy side, and don't heat it too quickly, and keep a close eye on it. Now to my cacao butter over here, I'm going to go ahead and add about, well, I should measure it so you guys can see what it is. I'm going to put just maybe almost a little better than a half capful in. So let's see what that measures out to be. Yeah. So I figured the cap was about a teaspoon. So I'm putting a little bit better than a half of a teaspoon in there. I'm going to be using a whole teaspoon altogether. The rest of it I'm going to use later, and we'll get to that in a bit. So while this is melting slowly, a lot of times your powdered milk, especially since I've had this in storage for a little while, yes, I kept it in the bag, I just recently opened it up. What you're probably going to want to do is get your blender, and I just made up some powdered sugar, and that's why the blender looks like this. And in your blender, you're going to put in 2/3 cup of the powdered sugar. It's 1. You can see how accurate I am here. 2. And then to that, I'm going to add 2 tablespoons of the organic powdered milk. Oops, that's not a tablespoon, that's a teaspoon. And I'm using the spoon for this just because it's easier than trying to pour it into my hand because of the nature of this. So yeah, because sometimes your powdered milk tends to be a little clumpy, it's important that you get it ground up as fine as possible. So I'm just going to run the process in the blender for a little bit so these 2 ingredients can blend together really good and get as fine as I can possibly get it. Now what you may need to do is take a chopstick, pretty powdery, and kind of stir it around in there a little bit every now and then. Otherwise it can kind of clump on the bottom. And then run it again. Okay, that looks pretty good, best I can tell. All right, I need to let the cocoa butter finish melting, and then I'm gonna come back when that's ready and go on to the next step. My cocoa butter is almost melted, and I wanted to say one more thing about if you're not using a double boiler in particular, is making sure that you really keep a close eye on your cocoa butter and keep stirring it. I like to use a small fork because I'm just, you know, I'm not making this humongous batch because I'm telling you, this is actually quite a bit because I got to do this whole process again. It's almost there, and so just got a couple more chunks here to finish melting. Okay, turning that off because it is all melted. That's why you want to watch it closely, because as soon as it's melted, that's when you're going to go and you're going to add your powdered milk and powdered sugar, and you're going to want to start blending it right away. Now it's important that you don't be working with any wet, you know, like with water ingredients or utensils or even your hands, because you don't want water dripping into this. So I've mixed the powdered sugar and the powdered milk in here, and you want to work quickly here and try to get it as smooth as possible. I want to show you something. If you look close in there, you'll see some little brown flecks. That's because some of the powdered sugar was made with, because the little bit that was left in the jar before I made up the fresh batch was made with coconut sugar. So you can make a powdered sugar with coconut sugar as well. So don't forget to go check out that video to learn how. Super easy. Okay, so now what you're going to do is you're going to pour a little bit into each one of your cups. I have a dozen here. So for this recipe, a dozen is good to have. These will actually make pretty good sized peppermint patties. And just keep moving, even if some look more full than the others. You don't want to move too slowly. Okay, there we go. It's pretty even. And I'm making quite a mess here, as you can see. So now what I'm going to do with this, just a little bit more out of there, is I'm going to take this and I'm going to stick it in the freezer. You can stick it in the fridge and let it set up, and then I'm going to move on to my next step. All right, so I'm ready for the next step, but I'm leaving the first part of the peppermint patties in the freezer until I'm completely ready for them, because I want them to stay very cold. So what I need to do is I'm just using this. I didn't bother cleaning it out. There's no need. And I'm going to add more. I'm going to start all over with the cacao butter with another 4 ounces. You go just a bit shy if you wanted to. It depends on how much of the actual chocolate flavor you want. I'm going to go ahead and go 4 ounces. Okay, and I'm going to start melting that. And then to this, I'm going to add about 2 tablespoons of my raw honey. You can go a little sweeter or a little less, or maybe none at all, since there's plenty of sweetness in the white part, in the white chocolate part, because what I showed you there was actually how you make white chocolate. And I almost forgot, I was going to add a little bit more peppermint oil to the chocolate mixture going on over here. So to this you want to go about a half capful or maybe a little less. Alright, so I'm going to just let that melt, and I'll be back when I'm ready for the next step. My cacao butter and honey and all that's all melted. So now I'm going to add 1/2 cup of cacao powder to this mixture, and then I want to blend it real well. And you can see these look pretty white now that they're chilled. They're still going to have a bit of a blonde color if you're going to, you know, because of the cacao butter and the blonde colored sugar. And then if you choose to use coconut sugar, it's going to look tan. But, you know, it's really not that big a deal what it looks like. It's how it tastes that matters. So you got to go with whatever healthy option you want. But really for the white chocolate, You need to have a powdered sugar to get the best set on it because you're not using cacao powder in it. Okay, so same thing. You're going to just start pouring over your white chocolate. Try to keep it even. It's best if you start with a little bit at a time and not go with what you think goes in there, because then you can always go back and add a little bit more to each of the ones that look a little lower than the others. And then if you got your little rubber spatula ready, your silicone spatula, and you can just scrape out the rest into wherever. Okay, so now I'm going to put these back in the freezer and let them finish setting up, and I'll be back in a bit. So my peppermint patties are out of the freezer and they are ready, and all I have to do is just press them, it's so easy, out of these little silicone things. Thermofratzers. Thank you, Mr. Rain. Where'd you come from? All right. So there we have it. 1 dozen nice thick peppermint patties. I mean, they're not even that big, the ones you buy at the store. And these ones are more frugal and more healthy and better tasting. So I hope you enjoyed this video and that you learned something new. Thanks for watching. Take care and God bless.